The morning sun peeked through the clouds as Maria Henderson finished her gardening work. At 68, she still had the energy of someone half her age, especially when it came to tending the flowers and vegetables on her property. She wiped the sweat from her brow and looked down at her clothes. Old jeans with dirt stains at the knees, a faded blue flannel shirt with rolled-up sleeves, and her trusty work boots that had seen better days. Good enough, she muttered to herself. She wasn't planning on changing before heading to the bank. After all, what did it matter what she wore? She was only going to discuss some investment options for a portion of her money. The rest of her errands wouldn't require her to look fancy either. Maria drove her 10-year-old pickup truck into town, parking it in front of Westfield National Bank. The building stood tall and impressive with its glass doors and marble floors. She grabbed her worn leather bag, checked that she had all her documents, and headed inside. The cool air conditioning hit her face as she stepped through the doors. The bank was busy that Tuesday morning, with several people waiting in line for the tellers while others sat in the waiting area. Men in suits and women in business attire moved about with purpose. In her gardening clothes, Maria stood out like a wildflower in a rose garden. She approached the reception desk where a young woman in her 20s sat. The receptionist, whose name tag read Heather, looked up from her computer. Her eyes quickly scanned Maria from head to toe, taking in the soil-stained jeans, the simple flannel shirt, and the work boots still carrying traces of garden dirt. A subtle shift in her expression revealed her judgment. A slight raising of perfectly shaped eyebrows, a tightening of glossy lips. "Can I help you?" Heather asked, her voice carrying a hint of impatience. "Yes," Maria said with a warm smile, unaware of the receptionist's thoughts. "I'd like to speak with a financial advisor about some investment options. I'm looking to move a significant amount of money into new accounts." Heather's eyes narrowed slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, I don't. I was hoping someone might be available today," Maria replied, still smiling. "I'm in town only for a few days." Heather exchanged a glance with the teller at the nearest counter, a look that carried an entire conversation. The teller, a man in his 30s with slicked-back hair, gave a barely perceptible smirk. "I see," Heather said, turning back to her computer. She clicked her mouse several times, taking much longer than necessary. "And what kind of investments were you interested in?" "Well, I'm looking at diversifying my portfolio. I have some funds I'd like to move from another bank, and I was told Westfield has excellent wealth management services," Maria explained. Heather looked up from her screen, doubt clear in her eyes. She glanced again at Maria's simple appearance and well-worn clothes. "Our wealth management services typically require a minimum investment," she said slowly, as if explaining a difficult concept to a child. "Perhaps you'd like to speak with someone about our basic savings options." Maria's smile remained, though it didn't quite reach her eyes now. "I understand there are minimums. That won't be a problem. I'd still prefer to speak with an advisor about the full range of options." Heather let out a small sigh that seemed to say, "Your time to waste." She picked up the phone and dialed an extension, turning slightly away from Maria as she spoke in hushed tones. "Thomas? There's a lady here asking about investment options." She paused, listening. No appointment. She's insisting on speaking to an advisor." Another pause. "Yes, I mentioned that, but she's still here." A final pause. "Okay, I'll tell her." Heather hung up and turned back to Maria with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Blake can see you, but there will be a wait. He's with clients right now." "That's fine," Maria said. "I don't mind waiting." "You can have a seat over there," Heather said, gesturing to the waiting area. As Maria turned to walk away, she heard Heather mutter under her breath, "Just wasting everyone's time." The words weren't meant to be heard, but Maria caught them anyway. Her steps faltered for just a moment before she continued to the waiting area, choosing a seat near the window where she could watch people passing by on the street. As she settled in, she noticed how other customers who entered after her were greeted warmly. A man in an expensive suit approached the desk, and Heather's entire demeanor changed. Back straightening, smile widening, voice lifting to a friendly pitch. Within minutes, he was escorted to an office while Maria continued to wait. Time ticked by slowly. Maria watched as one customer after another was attended to while she remained in her seat. 15 minutes passed, then 30, then 45. She observed the bank's operations with quiet interest, noting how people were treated differently based on their appearance. The well-dressed received prompt attention and respectful tones. Those in casual clothes got standard service. And then there was how they were treating her, the woman in gardening clothes who was apparently at the bottom of their priority list. An hour had nearly passed when Heather finally called her name. "Mrs. Henderson? Mr. Blake can see you now." Maria rose from her seat, gathering her worn leather bag. As she walked toward the desk, she noticed several other customers had come and gone, none waiting nearly as long as she had. Heather led her down a hallway lined with offices. Through glass walls, Maria could see financial advisors in deep conversation with clients. They stopped at the smallest office at the end of the hall, barely more than a cubicle with a door. "Mr. Blake will be with you shortly," Heather said, gesturing for Maria to enter before walking away without another word. The office was plain compared to the others she had passed. A simple desk with a computer, 2 basic chairs for clients, and a few generic motivational posters on the wall. No credentials hung behind the desk. No family photos sat on the surface. This was clearly the office assigned to the newest or least accomplished advisor. Maria sat down and waited. Through the glass, she watched as Heather returned to her desk and laughed with the teller who had smirked earlier. They both glanced in her direction, and Maria had no doubt she was the subject of their amusement. After another 10 minutes, a young man hurried in. He looked to be in his early 30s, wearing a suit that seemed one size too large, as if he hadn't yet grown into his professional role. His tie was slightly crooked and a coffee stain marked his cuff. "Mrs. Henderson? I'm Thomas Blake," he said, extending his hand. His handshake was too quick, barely a touch before he withdrew and moved behind his desk. "Sorry for the wait. We're quite busy today with scheduled appointments." "No problem," Maria said kindly. "I appreciate you making time for me." Thomas nodded distractedly as he woke up his computer. "So Heather mentioned you wanted to discuss investment options. What exactly were you looking for today?" "I'm interested in moving some funds from another bank," Maria explained. "I'd like to know what wealth management services Westfield offers." Thomas glanced up from his screen, his eyes doing the same quick assessment Heather had done earlier. His expression shifted subtly. "I see. Well, before we discuss that, perhaps we should start with the basics. Do you currently have any accounts with us?" "No, this would be new," Maria replied. "And may I ask what sort of investment amount you're considering?" His tone had changed, becoming slower and more deliberate, as if he needed to simplify things for her benefit. "I'm looking to move about $2 million initially," Maria said calmly. "Depending on the performance and service, there could be substantially more later." Thomas's fingers, which had been poised over his keyboard, froze. He blinked rapidly, his mouth opening slightly before he caught himself. $2 million? He repeated, a hint of disbelief in his voice. "Yes," Maria confirmed. "Would that be sufficient to qualify for your wealth management services?" For a moment, Thomas looked like he might laugh, as if waiting for the punchline to a joke. When Maria's expression remained serious, confusion flickered across his face. He glanced again at her gardening clothes, the dirt under her fingernails, the weathered hands that spoke of years of hard work. Yes, that would certainly qualify," he said, his voice shifting to a more respectful tone. "Though we typically require proper documentation for such large transactions." "Of course," Maria nodded. "I have everything you need in my bag. But before we get to paperwork, I'd like to hear more about your services. What options would you recommend for someone in my position?" Thomas cleared his throat, clearly recalibrating his approach. The woman sitting across from him in dirt-stained jeans was suddenly a potentially valuable client, and his entire demeanor was transforming before Maria's eyes. The first part of Maria's day at the bank was drawing to a close, but her real purpose for being there was just beginning. As Thomas scrambled to adjust his attitude and provide proper service, Maria settled in, prepared to see just how far the bank's treatment of her would go, for better or worse. Thomas Blake shuffled some papers on his desk, clearly stalling for time. The young advisor hadn't expected someone like Maria to mention such a large sum of money. His entire approach had shifted from dismissive to awkward in the span of seconds. "So, Mrs. Henderson," he began, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "tell me about your investment goals. Are you looking for growth, income, or preservation of capital?" Maria folded her hands in her lap. "A mix, actually. I've worked hard all my life, and now I'm interested in making sure my money works for me. I'd like some growth opportunities, but also stable income options." Thomas nodded as if he understood perfectly, but there was still doubt lingering in his expression. "And may I ask what line of work you're in, Mrs. Henderson?" His eyes flicked once more to her dirt-stained clothes. "I've had various businesses over the years," Maria answered simply. She didn't elaborate further, watching to see if Thomas would press for details or make assumptions. He did both. "I see. Small businesses, I imagine. Family operations?" "You could say that," Maria replied with a slight smile. "Family has always been important to me." Thomas leaned back in his chair, confidence returning as he seemed to form a picture in his mind. "Well, for small business owners looking to retire, we typically recommend more conservative options. Perhaps a mix of CDs and our safe growth fund would be appropriate for someone in your situation." Maria noticed how he avoided discussing the premium wealth management options that would normally be presented to someone investing millions. "What about your Platinum Investor program?" "I read about it on your website." Thomas blinked, then let out a small chuckle. "The Platinum Investor program is designed for our high-net-worth clients with complex portfolio needs. It comes with significant fees and wouldn't be cost-effective for most retired small business owners." He spoke slowly, as if explaining something complicated to a child. "I see," Maria said. "And what qualifies someone as high net worth in your view?" Thomas shifted in his seat. "Well, typically clients with portfolios exceeding $5 million and complex financial situations involving multiple asset classes." "I see," Maria repeated, letting the words hang in the air. She had mentioned $2 million initially, a substantial sum by most standards, yet Thomas had immediately steered her toward the most basic options. An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Thomas cleared his throat. "Let me show you some materials on our standard investment packages." He reached for a brochure in his desk drawer, a glossy pamphlet with "Getting Started with Investing" printed across the top. Maria accepted it with a polite nod, noting it was clearly designed for first-time investors with minimal assets. The condescension was becoming more obvious by the minute. "These options require much lower minimum investments and have fewer fees," Thomas explained, pointing to a chart showing basic savings accounts and entry-level mutual funds. "They're much more suitable for your situation." "And what exactly do you think my situation is, Mr. Blake?" Maria asked, her voice still kind but with a new edge to it. Thomas faltered. "I simply meant that for someone looking to make their retirement savings last, these conservative options provide security without unnecessary complications." "I appreciate your concern," Maria said, "but I'd still like to hear about your premium services. The ones you offer to your important clients." Thomas's smile tightened. "Of course, though I should mention that those services are designed for a different client profile. They include personalized portfolio management, tax optimization strategies, estate planning services, and private banking privileges." "That sounds exactly like what I'm looking for," Maria replied. Thomas sighed, barely hiding his frustration. "Mrs. Henderson, these services come with significant fees. For someone with modest assets, they would eat into your principal unnecessarily." "I understand there are fees involved in quality service," Maria countered. "I'm willing to pay for expertise." Thomas glanced at his watch. "Perhaps we should start with some basic information. Could you tell me more about the source of the funds you're looking to invest? Retirement accounts? Sale of property?" Maria reached into her worn leather bag and pulled out a folder. "I have statements from my current accounts here." She handed him several pages. Thomas took them with visible reluctance, as if humoring her. But as his eyes scanned the first page, his expression changed. The account balance on the statement showed over $8 million. He quickly flipped to the next statement, which showed another account with nearly $12 million. "These are your accounts?" he asked, his voice suddenly higher. "Yes," Maria said simply. "Those are just my liquid assets. There are other investments not shown there." Thomas's face had paled considerably. I see." He looked again at her gardening clothes, then back at the statements, as if trying to reconcile the two. "And you're interested in transferring these funds to our bank?" "I'm considering it," Maria replied. "I'm evaluating several options. The quality of service is very important to me." Thomas swallowed hard. "Of course. Well, in that case, we should definitely discuss our Platinum Investor program. In fact, for accounts of your size, we offer our Diamond Circle services." He was speaking faster now, excitement and anxiety mixing in his voice. "Those come with dedicated wealth managers, exclusive investment opportunities, and customized financial strategies. That sounds more like what I was asking about initially, Maria noted. Thomas had the decency to look embarrassed. Yes, well, I apologize if there was any confusion. Based on that is, I didn't realize the extent of your portfolio. Because of how I'm dressed? Maria asked directly. Thomas flushed red. No, of course not. We treat all clients with the same respect regardless of appearance. It's just that typically clients with substantial assets tend to what, Mr. Blake? Tend to mention it right away, he finished lamely. Maria nodded slowly. I find that people show their true character when they don't know who they're speaking with. Don't you agree? Thomas shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I suppose that's one perspective. He straightened his tie nervously. Let me get some proper materials for you. In fact, for a client of your caliber, you should really be speaking with our senior wealth management team. I'm comfortable continuing our conversation, Maria said. Please tell me more about these Diamond Circle services. Thomas launched into a detailed explanation, now treating each word as if it were precious gold. His entire demeanor had transformed, leaning forward attentively, making direct eye contact. His voice warm and engaging where before it had been dismissive and condescending. We provide comprehensive estate planning services, charitable giving strategies, and access to exclusive investment opportunities not available to the general public, he explained enthusiastically. For clients like yourself, we offer quarterly private meetings with our chief investment officer to discuss market trends and portfolio adjustments. As he spoke, Maria noticed movement outside the glass wall of the office. Heather, the receptionist who had treated her so poorly, was walking by with a stack of files. She glanced in, did a double take at seeing Thomas's animated conversation, and slowed her pace to observe. Thomas noticed her too and waved her over urgently. When she approached the door, he excused himself for a moment and stepped outside, speaking to Heather in hushed tones. Maria couldn't hear their words, but she could see Heather's eyes widen as Thomas spoke. Both of them looked back at Maria with new expressions of shock and alarm. A moment later, Thomas returned, followed by Heather, who now wore a painfully bright smile. Mrs. Henderson, would you like some coffee or water? Heather asked, her voice honey-sweet where before it had been vinegar-sharp. Water would be nice, thank you, Maria replied. Still or sparkling? Heather asked eagerly. Still is fine. Right away. Heather practically bounced out of the office. Thomas watched her go before turning back to Maria with an even wider smile. While we continue our discussion, I've asked Heather to see if our senior wealth manager, Mrs. Patricia Winters, might be available to join us. For clients of your stature, we want to ensure you receive the very best attention. That wasn't necessary, Maria said. I was hoping to get a sense of how Westfield National Bank treats all its customers, not just the ones it deems important. Thomas's smile faltered slightly. We value all our customers equally, Mrs. Henderson. Do you? Maria asked, looking pointedly at the basic investment brochure still sitting on the desk between them. That hasn't been my experience today. Before Thomas could respond, a knock came at the door. A woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and an impeccably tailored suit entered, followed by Heather carrying a glass of water on a small tray as if it were fine champagne. Mrs. Henderson, Thomas said, standing quickly. This is Patricia Winters, our regional director and head of wealth management services. Maria smiled but remained seated. The second part of her bank visit was about to get even more interesting. Patricia Winters carried herself with the confident air of someone used to being in charge. Her handshake was firm as she greeted Maria, her smile professional but warm. Mrs. Henderson, it's a pleasure to meet you. I apologize for not being available when you first arrived, she said, taking the seat next to Thomas, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. No need to apologize, Maria replied. Mr. Blake has been showing me your basic investment packages. She gestured to the beginner's brochure still sitting on the desk. Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly as she glanced at the brochure, then at Thomas, who seemed to shrink in his chair. I see, Patricia said slowly. Well, I'm glad I could join you. Thomas mentioned you're considering transferring substantial assets to our institution? I'm exploring my options, Maria confirmed. I've been with First Regional Bank for nearly 30 years, but their recent changes in management have me reconsidering my banking relationships. Patricia nodded understandingly. 30 years is quite a commitment. May I ask what's prompted you to consider a change after such a long relationship? Maria appreciated the direct question. The personal touch is disappearing. New management seems more interested in cutting costs than maintaining relationships. My longtime advisor retired, and his replacement treats me like I'm just a number in a spreadsheet. That's unfortunate but not uncommon these days, Patricia said. At Westfield, we pride ourselves on personalized service for all our clients. She emphasized the word all with a quick glance at Thomas. That's good to hear, Maria said, though my experience today has been mixed. Thomas shifted in his chair, his face flushing red. Patricia's expression remained neutral, but her eyes sharpened. I'm sorry to hear that, Patricia said carefully. Would you mind elaborating? We take customer experience very seriously. Maria considered her words. When I arrived, I waited for nearly an hour while others who came after me were seen immediately. Mr. Blake here seemed to have decided what services were appropriate for me before looking at my financial situation. She gestured to her gardening clothes. Apparently my appearance suggested I wasn't worth premium attention. Thomas began to stammer. Mrs. Henderson, I assure you. Patricia held up a hand, silencing him instantly. Thomas, I'd like to speak with Mrs. Henderson privately. Would you excuse us? The young advisor practically leapt from his chair. Of course. I'll be at my desk if you need anything. He hurried out of the office, closing the door behind him. Once he was gone, Patricia turned to Maria with a more genuine expression. Mrs. Henderson, I want to personally apologize for any disrespect you've experienced today. It's completely unacceptable. Maria nodded but said nothing, waiting to see what would come next. Patricia continued. May I be frank with you? Please do. Thomas is new. He's been with us just 6 months, and while he's technically proficient, he clearly has much to learn about treating people with respect, regardless of appearances. Patricia shook her head. But his behavior reflects on our institution, and for that I am truly sorry. Thank you for your honesty, Maria said. But I have to wonder, is this an isolated incident or a symptom of the bank's culture? The receptionist treated me similarly. Patricia sighed deeply. We've grown quickly in recent years. With growth comes challenges in maintaining our values across all levels of the organization. She met Maria's eyes directly, but that's no excuse. May I ask you something personal, Mrs. Henderson? Go ahead. Was this something of a test for us today? Patricia asked. Coming in dressed casually, not mentioning your full financial status up front. Maria smiled slightly. Let's just say I've learned over the years that how people treat you when they think you have nothing tells you everything about how they'll treat others when you're not around. Patricia nodded slowly. A wise approach, and it appears we've failed your test rather spectacularly. So far, Maria agreed. So far, Patricia repeated, a note of hope in her voice. She leaned forward. Mrs. Henderson, I'd like the opportunity to show you that what you experienced today is not who we are at our core. Would you be willing to give us that chance? Maria considered the question. I'm still looking for a new banking relationship. But I need to know that all your clients receive respect, not just the wealthy ones. A fair concern, Patricia acknowledged. Perhaps I could tell you about some of our community initiatives. Actions speak louder than words, after all. For the next 15 minutes, Patricia outlined Westfield's community programs, financial literacy workshops in underserved neighborhoods, small business mentorship programs, and accessible banking services for elderly and disabled clients. As she spoke, Maria noted the passion in her voice seemed genuine. These sound like worthwhile programs, Maria said when Patricia finished. But they also make for good publicity. How do you ensure your day-to-day operations reflect these same values? Patricia smiled. You ask excellent questions, Mrs. Henderson. The truth is, it's an ongoing effort. We have training programs, mystery shoppers who test our service quality, and feedback systems. But clearly, she gestured toward the door where Thomas had exited. We still have work to do. Maria nodded. At least you're honest about it. May I ask what your business interests are, Mrs. Henderson? Thomas mentioned something about several accounts, but he was rather flustered when he came to find me. Maria reached into her bag and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the desk to Patricia. The card was simple but elegant, with Henderson Enterprises embossed in gold letters. Patricia read the card, her eyes widening slightly. Henderson Enterprises, the real estate development company? That's right, Maria confirmed. Patricia looked up, a new recognition in her eyes. You're that Maria Henderson? The one who developed the River Pine community and the Henderson Business Park? Yes, Maria said simply. Patricia was speechless for a moment. Mrs. Henderson, your company is one of the largest employers in the region. Your developments have transformed the county's economy over the past 2 decades. Maria smiled modestly. I've been fortunate in my investments. Patricia seemed to be searching for words. I had no idea we were meeting today. Your reputation precedes you, not just as a successful businesswoman, but as a philanthropist. The Henderson Foundation's work with affordable housing initiatives is remarkable. Thank you, Maria said. I believe those who succeed have a responsibility to help others find their path. Patricia nodded, then frowned slightly. May I ask why you didn't mention this when you first arrived? Would it have changed how I was treated? Maria asked. Patricia had the grace to look embarrassed. It shouldn't have, but realistically, yes, it would have. And that's exactly why I didn't mention it, Maria explained. I don't want special treatment because of my name or my wealth. I want to see how your bank treats ordinary people, because that tells me everything I need to know about your values. Patricia nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. And based on today's experience, I have serious reservations, Maria finished for her. A knock on the door interrupted them. Heather poked her head in, her expression anxious. Mrs. Winters? The district manager is on line 1. He says it's urgent, Patricia frowned. Tell him I'm in an important meeting. I'll call him back. Heather hesitated. He specifically asked about Mrs. Henderson. He said he just got a call from the CEO about a potential new major client. Maria raised an eyebrow. News travels fast. Patricia looked mortified. Word of your visit has apparently reached our head office. She turned to Heather. Please tell him I'm speaking with Mrs. Henderson now and we'll brief him afterward. Yes, ma'am, Heather said, glancing curiously at Maria before closing the door. Patricia turned back to Maria with an apologetic smile. I'm sorry about that. Your reputation clearly precedes you. So it seems, Maria said dryly. Mrs. Henderson, Patricia began, her tone now more determined. I want to be completely transparent with you. What happened today, the way you were treated, is unacceptable regardless of who you are or your financial status. I would like the opportunity to make this right. And how would you propose to do that? Maria asked. First, I'd like to personally handle your accounts if you decide to bank with us. Second, I want to invite you to speak to our staff about your experience today. Not to shame anyone, but as a learning opportunity. And third, Patricia leaned forward. I'd like to discuss how Westfield might partner with the Henderson Foundation on its community initiatives. Maria considered the offer. She hadn't expected this turn of events. She had come to test the bank's service, fully expecting to take her business elsewhere after the initial treatment, but Patricia's genuine response was giving her pause. Those are interesting proposals, Maria said finally. I'll need time to consider them. Of course, Patricia agreed. Take all the time you need, and regardless of your decision about banking with us, I hope you'll consider the speaking opportunity. Your perspective would be invaluable. Maria nodded, gathering her things. I'll think about it. For now, I believe I've taken enough of your time. As she stood, Patricia rose as well. Mrs. Henderson, thank you for your candor today. Whatever you decide, you've given us a powerful reminder about the importance of treating everyone with dignity and respect. Maria smiled. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come in unexpected packages. Mrs. Winters. As they walked toward the lobby, Maria could feel eyes following her. The same eyes that had dismissed her earlier now watching with newfound awareness. The third part of her bank visit had revealed more than she expected, not just about Westfield National Bank, but about the possibility for change when confronted with uncomfortable truths. The next morning, Maria sat at her kitchen table, sipping coffee and looking out at her garden. The events at Westfield National Bank still played in her mind. She had gone there expecting to be dismissed based on her appearance, and the bank staff had unfortunately lived up to that expectation. Yet Patricia Winters' genuine apology and proposals had given her something to think about. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. The caller ID showed Richard Thompson, her longtime friend and financial advisor who had recently retired from First Regional Bank. Good morning, Richard, she answered warmly. Maria. How are you? Did you visit Westfield yesterday as planned? Maria chuckled. I did. And it went exactly as you predicted. Let me guess, Richard said, his voice knowing. They took one look at your gardening clothes and treated you like you were there to ask for free pens? Pretty much, Maria confirmed. The receptionist made me wait an hour while people who came in after me were seen immediately. Then they assigned me to their newest advisor who tried to steer me toward basic savings accounts. Richard sighed. Unfortunately, that doesn't surprise me. Banking has changed, Maria. It's all about appearances these days. Not entirely, Maria said, thinking of Patricia. Their regional director stepped in after they realized who I was. She seemed genuinely mortified by how I'd been treated. Of course she was mortified, Richard scoffed. You're Maria Henderson. Your business could mean millions in fees for them. I don't think it was just that, Maria said thoughtfully. She seemed sincerely concerned about the principle of it. She even invited me to speak to their staff about the experience. Interesting, Richard said. So have you made a decision? Are you moving your accounts? Maria watched a hummingbird hover near her flower garden. I'm still thinking about it. I have a meeting with Patricia Winters again today. She wants to show me some of their community programs firsthand. Well, keep me posted. I still have contacts at other banks if you want introductions. After saying goodbye to Richard, Maria finished her coffee and went to get ready. Unlike yesterday, today she dressed in a simple but elegant pantsuit, professional without being flashy. She didn't need to test Westfield again. Today was about seeing if they were worthy of a second chance. At precisely 10 a.m., Maria pulled up to Westfield National Bank. This time, she drove her newer sedan rather than her old pickup truck. As she approached the entrance, she spotted Patricia waiting for her in the lobby. Patricia greeted her warmly. Good morning, Mrs. Henderson. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for the invitation, Maria replied. Though I admit I'm curious about what you have to show me. I thought actions would speak louder than words, Patricia explained as she led Maria not toward the offices but toward the exit. With your permission, I'd like to show you something a few blocks away. They walked together down the street, Patricia pointing out local businesses along the way. Many of these shops have been here for generations, she explained. When the financial crisis hit, several were at risk of closing. Westfield established an emergency small business loan program with minimal paperwork and flexible terms. Maria nodded, impressed, but still reserved in her judgment. That's commendable. After a few blocks, they reached a converted warehouse with a sign reading, Financial Futures Center. Patricia held the door open for Maria. Inside, the space was divided into several areas. In one corner, a group of teenagers listened attentively to a young woman explaining something about credit scores. In another area, elderly people worked one-on-one with volunteers at computer stations. The center of the room held a small business incubator space where people of various ages worked on laptops. This is our community financial center, Patricia explained. We opened it 3 years ago. It's separate from our banking operations, a completely free resource for the community. Maria walked around observing the activities. Who staffs it? A combination of bank employees and community volunteers, Patricia said. Every Westfield employee, from tellers to executives, spends at least 1 day per month here. It's part of our commitment to the community, but it also reminds us why we do what we do. A young man approached them, smiling warmly. Maria recognized him as Thomas Blake, the advisor who had treated her dismissively the day before. He looked different here, more relaxed, more authentic. Mrs. Winters, the high school group is ready for the budgeting workshop, he said, then noticed Maria. His face flushed with recognition and embarrassment. Mrs. Henderson, I didn't expect to see you here. Hello, Mr. Blake, Maria said coolly. Patricia looked between them. Thomas volunteers with our teen financial literacy program every Tuesday morning. He's actually one of our most dedicated volunteers. Thomas looked at the floor, clearly uncomfortable. Mrs. Henderson, about yesterday. I want to apologize for how I treated you. It was unprofessional and disrespectful. Maria studied him. His discomfort seemed genuine, not just the fear of someone who had offended a wealthy potential client. Mr. Blake, may I ask you something? Of course, he said, meeting her eyes despite his obvious shame. Why did you treat me the way you did yesterday? Thomas swallowed hard. I made assumptions based on how you were dressed. I thought you were, He trailed off. Not worth your time, Maria finished for him. Yes, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. And I was completely wrong. Not just because of who you turned out to be, but because no one should be treated that way. I'm truly sorry. Maria hadn't expected such honesty. Thank you for your candor, Mr. Blake. Thomas nodded, then looked at his watch. I should get back to the students. It was good to see you again, Mrs. Henderson. He walked back to the group of teenagers, who greeted him with surprising enthusiasm. He's excellent with the students, Patricia commented as they watched him begin the workshop. Many of them come from challenging backgrounds and they respond to his energy. People are complex, Maria observed. We all contain contradictions. They continued their tour, stopping to speak with various participants and volunteers. Maria was particularly impressed by a retirement planning workshop for service industry workers and a first-time homebuyer program targeted at single parents. These are all Westfield initiatives? Maria asked as they observed a small business coaching session. Yes, Patricia confirmed. They're funded entirely by the bank, not through our foundation or as tax write-offs. Our board believes banking should be about more than just profits. Maria raised an eyebrow. That's not a common perspective in the industry these days. No, it's not, Patricia agreed. And I won't pretend we're perfect. What happened to you yesterday proves we still have a long way to go. But this, she gestured around the center, this is the heart of what we're trying to build. They watched as Thomas enthusiastically led his students through a budgeting exercise, his earlier embarrassment replaced by genuine engagement with the teenagers. Tell me about him, Maria said. Nodding toward Thomas, Patricia followed her gaze. Thomas? He grew up in foster care, put himself through college with scholarships and 3 jobs. He's smart and hardworking, but still learning the people side of banking. Why did you hire him? Because during his interview, when we asked what he wanted to achieve in his career, he didn't talk about money or position. He talked about wanting to help kids like him understand finances so they wouldn't make the same mistakes he did. Patricia shook her head. That's why I was so disappointed by his behavior yesterday. It didn't align with who I believe he really is. Maria considered this. People often live up or down to our expectations of them. Yes, Patricia agreed. And as managers, we set those expectations. His failure yesterday was also my failure. They walked back toward the main bank building, discussing the various programs in more detail. As they approached the bank, Maria made her decision. I'd like to open accounts with Westfield, she said. Patricia looked surprised. Really? After yesterday, I wouldn't have blamed you for taking your business elsewhere. Yesterday showed me your weaknesses, Maria explained. Today showed me your strengths and your potential. No institution is perfect, but what matters is how you respond to your imperfections. Thank you for giving us this chance, Patricia said. I promise you won't regret it. I have one condition, Maria added. Name it. I want Thomas Blake to handle my accounts under your supervision. Patricia stopped walking. Thomas, are you sure? Maria nodded. He made a mistake, acknowledged it honestly, and seems to be learning from it. Plus, I saw how he connects with those teenagers. He has potential. It would certainly be a powerful learning experience for him, Patricia said thoughtfully, and for the entire staff, seeing that everyone deserves a second chance. Exactly, Maria said with a smile. Sometimes the best way to teach a lesson is to live it. As they entered the bank, heads turned and whispers spread. The same staff who had dismissed Maria the day before now watched with newfound respect and curiosity. The fourth part of Maria's journey with Westfield National Bank was taking an unexpected turn. Not just a test of the bank's character, but an opportunity to shape it. 3 months had passed since Maria Henderson first walked into Westfield National Bank in her gardening clothes. The crisp autumn air had given way to winter's chill, and the town was decorated with holiday lights and festive displays. Maria stood in front of the mirror in her home, adjusting the simple pearl necklace that complemented her elegant but understated navy dress. Today was an important day, the official opening of the Henderson Financial Education Center. The doorbell rang, and Maria smiled at her reflection before going to answer it. Thomas Blake stood on her porch looking professional in a well-fitted suit, a far cry from the nervous young man she'd first met. Good morning, Mrs. Henderson. He greeted her with a confident smile. Ready for the big day? As ready as I'll ever be, Maria replied, grabbing her coat. I'm not much for public speaking, but Some things are worth stepping outside your comfort zone. They drove to the newly renovated building downtown that now housed the Henderson Financial Education Center. What had once been an abandoned department store was now a modern facility dedicated to financial literacy and economic empowerment for the community. The partnership between Henderson Enterprises and Westfield National Bank had transformed not just the building, but was beginning to transform the community as well. As they pulled up, Maria could see Patricia Winters waiting at the entrance, along with several other bank executives and community leaders. A small crowd had already gathered for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. "Nervous?" Thomas asked as he parked the car. Maria smiled. "A little, but proud too. This project means a lot to me." "It means a lot to all of us," Thomas said sincerely. "You've changed things, Mrs. Henderson, not just at the bank, but for many people in the community." As they walked toward the entrance, Maria reflected on the changes of the past 3 months. After deciding to give Westfield a second chance, she had worked closely with Patricia and Thomas to develop a new kind of financial center, one that would expand on the work already being done at the bank's community center. But with greater resources and reach, Patricia greeted them warmly. "Maria, Thomas, everything's ready. The mayor just arrived and the press is setting up." Maria nodded, taking in the scene. Heather, the receptionist who had treated her so poorly on that first day, was helping organize the event, directing people with genuine warmth that hadn't been there before. She caught Maria's eye and gave a respectful nod, which Maria returned with a smile. The ceremony began promptly at 10 a.m. The mayor spoke briefly about community renewal, followed by Patricia, who outlined the center's programs and goals. Then it was Maria's turn to speak. As she approached the podium, Maria looked out at the faces watching her. Some she recognized from the bank. Others were community members who would benefit from the center's services. All were united by a shared purpose today. "Thank you all for coming," Maria began. "Many of you know me as a businesswoman, a developer, maybe a philanthropist. But few know my story began very differently." The crowd quieted, intrigued. "I grew up poor," Maria continued. "My parents were hard-working farm laborers who never had the opportunity to learn about managing money. When I was 16, we lost our small home because of a predatory loan my father didn't understand. That experience shaped my life in many ways." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the audience. "I promised myself 2 things then: that I would learn everything I could about money, and that someday I would help others avoid the pain my family experienced. The first goal led me to build Henderson Enterprises. Today, with this center, I'm fulfilling the second promise." Maria gestured to the building behind her. "This center isn't just about teaching people how to balance a checkbook or save for retirement, though those skills are important. It's about dignity. It's about treating every person with respect, regardless of their bank balance or the clothes they wear." Her eyes found Thomas in the crowd, who nodded slightly, understanding the reference. 3 months ago, I walked into Westfield National Bank dressed in my gardening clothes. I wanted to see how they would treat an ordinary person, not knowing who I was. The experience was educational. A few knowing chuckles rippled through the crowd, particularly from the bank staff who had heard the story. I could have taken my business elsewhere. Instead, I saw an opportunity, not just for change within one bank, but for broader impact in our community. That's what brings us here today. Maria went on to explain the center's programs: financial literacy classes for all ages, small business development resources, one-on-one counseling for families facing economic hardship, and special initiatives for vulnerable populations, including seniors and foster youth aging out of the system. "I'm particularly proud of our newest initiative," Maria said, nodding toward Thomas. "The Second Chance Financial Mentorship Program, which pairs experienced financial advisors with young people who have aged out of foster care. Thomas Blake has been instrumental in developing this program, bringing both professional expertise and personal experience to its design." Thomas looked surprised at the public acknowledgement, but stood a little straighter, pride evident in his expression. After the formal remarks, the ribbon was cut and people began touring the facility. Maria found herself speaking with one group after another: local business owners, school administrators, community organizers, all excited about the center's potential impact. During a quiet moment, Patricia joined her near the refreshment table. You know, when you first came into the bank that day, I never imagined we'd end up here. Maria smiled. Life takes unexpected turns. You could have destroyed Thomas's career after how he treated you, Patricia observed. Instead, you've helped him grow into one of our most promising advisors. The work he's doing with foster youth is transformative, for them and for him. People deserve second chances, Maria said. And sometimes our worst moments can lead to our greatest growth, if we're willing to learn from them. As they spoke, Thomas approached with an elderly couple. Mrs. Henderson, I'd like you to meet Mr. and Mrs. Chen. They've just signed up for our senior financial protection program. Maria greeted them warmly, noticing how Thomas treated them with genuine respect and patience as he explained the program's benefits in simple terms they could understand. The nervous, status-conscious advisor who had dismissed her was gone, replaced by someone who truly seemed to care about helping others. Later, as the event was winding down, Maria found herself alone with Thomas for a moment. Thank you, he said simply. For what? Maria asked. For not giving up on me? For seeing something in me worth salvaging? His voice was earnest. That day you came in, it was one of the worst mistakes of my career, but it led to the most important lesson I've ever learned. And what lesson is that? Maria asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. That every person who walks through those doors deserves the same respect and attention, regardless of how they look or what we assume about them. Thomas looked around at the center. I teach that to every new employee I train now. Maria nodded approvingly. That's why I insisted you handle my accounts. I saw potential in you, not just to learn but to teach others. As the day continued, Maria observed the interactions around her with satisfaction. Heather, once dismissive and judgmental, was patiently helping an elderly man fill out a program registration form. Bank executives were engaged in genuine conversations with community members from all walks of life. The walls that often separated financial institutions from the people they served were, at least in this space, coming down. Near the end of the event, a local reporter approached Maria for a comment. Mrs. Henderson, you're known for your business success and philanthropy. What makes this project different from your other charitable works? Maria considered the question. This isn't charity, she said finally. It's about justice and opportunity. Financial knowledge shouldn't be a privilege for the few. It should be accessible to everyone. And financial institutions should serve all people with equal respect and care. The reporter nodded. And choosing to partner with Westfield after your initial experience there, was that a difficult decision? Maria smiled, watching as Thomas helped a young single mother sign up for the first-time homebuyer program. Sometimes the most meaningful partnerships come from challenging beginnings. What matters isn't where you start, but how you respond when your values are tested. As the day drew to a close and the last visitors departed, Maria stood in the center of the main hall, taking in the space that had once been just an idea. What had begun as a simple test of a bank's character had evolved into something far more significant. Not just a teaching moment for one institution, but a resource that would touch countless lives in the community. The fifth and final chapter of this particular story was ending, but for Maria Henderson, Thomas Blake, and the many people whose lives would be changed by the center, a new chapter was just beginning, one built on respect, second chances, and the belief that every person deserves to be treated with dignity, no matter what they wear or where they come from.